Pesticides are essential for crop protection, but so is looking after the people and equipment that apply them. At the end of each spraying day, there are important steps to follow to prevent contamination and costly mistakes.
I have to inform you today about a real niggling little issue, and that is that in many cases, farmers and farm workers do not clean the spraying equipment adequately after doing a spray operation on the farm. And if you are so unfortunate of having sprayed a herbicide on a day, and the next day you want to spray an insecticide or a fungicide, your tank is contaminated. You can take your whole farm out with one single day's operation. So cleaning your spray equipment after day is as important as treating your crop for a weed, an insect pest, or a fungal disease.
Have you ever wondered if you should rinse the spray tank at the end of every day, even if there's still some mixture left? Here are some great recommendations to make sure your tank and system are ready for the next day's job.
You have to work out that you actually use exactly the right quantity of chemical and spray mixture on the farm, that you don't end up with, let's say, 20 or 40 or 100 liters of extra spray mixture because you're wasting your money. But when your tank is empty on that particular day, you have to decontaminate the tank and the whole system, and you can often, from many of the suppliers that are members of CropLife SA, buy a tank cleaning agent that you put into the tank. You fill the tank up half with water, it flushes the tank, it flushes all the pipes, all the gates, the pressure stuff, and you irrigate that rinse water then over your farm roads, where the last bit of chemical is then decomposed by the sun, the energy, the heat, and dissipation. And after doing that, you give one more rinse in your tank with clean water, spray it out, and then your tank is clean and fit and fine for the next day use. And remember, do not store your spray tanks or your knapsacks out in the sun, because the sun decomposes your plastic on the tank and your pipes. It must always be stored in a nice, dark and a cool place where it's out of sun, because you don't want solar energy to impact the plastic or the rubber or the silicone seals on your spray apparatus.
Once you've emptied a pesticide container into the spray tank, what's the safest and most responsible way to deal with it? The triple rinse process is critically important for safety and the environment.
And most of our containers on the farms are what we call solid containers. In other words, a drum or a bottle. Some of them are flexible, which might be a polypropylene bag or a paper bag or an LDPE bag. What we want to happen on a farm is that every single empty container must be triple rinsed or spray rinsed to make sure that all the chemical is rinsed out of the container back into the spray tank. The principle is very simple. So let us take, for example, a solid HTP container, which is like a typical 20-liter drum which contains a pesticide. So once you finished your chemical, you keep it over your spray tank for 30 seconds to drain out all the chemical. Then you add 1/4 of the volume clean water into the drum. You screw the cap on, you shake it up for 30 seconds, and you decant that rinse water into your spray tank, because you paid for the chemical in the container to go into your crop, not anywhere else. Once you've done that, you repeat the process twice. In other words, you do that rinsing 3 times. That's what we call the triple rinse. Once you've done the triple rinsing of any packaging, whether a solid container or flexible container, you puncture it with an axe or with your pocket line or with a carpet knife to make sure it cannot be used for anything else anymore. You keep it in your store, and you contact one of the CropLife SA certified recyclers to take it to their depot, which is the closest to you, or some of them even drive to the farm and come and take those triple rinse empty containers off hand, because it goes back into recycling and it generates an income for some other parties out there that transform these chemical containers then into, for example, furniture or plastic wood or things like piping or like fencing posts. So that is the duty of the farmers and the farm workers, to make sure every container of every pesticide is properly and adequately cleaned by triple rinsing or spray rinsing, that you don't waste your chemical. It goes in the spray tank, and that material is recycled then into what we call the circular economy, because we need to reuse the plastic. It shouldn't go back into the environment. And to end off with, remember, we are not allowed to bury or burn any container on the farm, because that is not only against the law, but it also contaminates the environment and causes risk for people and for environmental health.
Sometimes, due to changes in crops, weather, or regulations, you can end up with pesticides you no longer need or are not allowed to use. Here is the correct and legal procedure to dispose of these hazardous products.
We use the broad term obsolete pesticides. In other words, something which is not of any use to anybody anymore. It might happen because of the climate or the spraying season or difference in crops or something might become prohibited, that you end up in your farm store with something which is not of any use anymore. And that chemical or that commodity is a hazardous substance. And the only way to dispose of it is to do it with incineration at a very high temperature. So advice to all the farmers in the country is, if you have any obsolete pesticides in the farm of whatever nature, you contact CropLife SA, in particular looking at the website, because all our details are on the website on what to do. You need to fill in the inventory form, you need to give us the inventory form, and we will make a plan to get it lifted away from your farm and have it properly incinerated by a licensed hazardous waste facility to make sure it is done properly and adequately. And once we've done that, you get issued then with certificate of adequate disposal. Because if you bury that stuff on the farm, or you throw it down into the river, imagine the environmental pollution, imagine the risk to the environment and to people's health out there. So the only way to get rid of old chemicals from the farm is to have it properly stored, then properly packed, properly collected and properly incinerated by a licensed facility which is authorized by the Department of Environmental Affairs. That's the only way that you can do it. So you must contact CropLife SA and we will help you with the process.
At the end of the day, your PPE has done its job protecting you from pesticide exposure, but it needs proper care before tomorrow's work. In the next section, we explain how to clean, store and handle PPE safely.
Once spray operations have concluded for the day, all PPE must be washed or cleaned, repaired or replaced if damaged, and safely stored in the locker assigned to the spray operator. It is important for all farm workers handling, mixing, or applying pesticides to remember that PPE may not be taken home. PPE must be left in the locker assigned to the worker. Further, no PPE is to be reused a second day without cleaning and washing, and by no means may PPE be worn for non-pesticide related work.
After a day in the field, the final step is looking after yourself. Here are some practical advice on how to wash off any possible residues and reduce the risk of exposure.
When it comes to personal decontamination, spray operators must take a cool shower with gentle soap after spraying operations have been completed. Remember, cool water keeps skin pores closed and prevents any pesticide residues from entering the body, whereas hot or warm water opens pores and allows pesticide residues to penetrate the body.
Thanks for watching. We hope this video has given you, as farmers and farm workers, clear and practical steps for safe pesticide handling, from application to cleanup. For more tools and training or advice, visit CropLife SA.